Okay, hello everyone. I'm live, I think. It seems like I'm delayed a little bit from the chat, so I'm sorry in advance, but thanks for hanging out with me. Hello everyone. I'm live, I think. All right. So now that I'm here, I just want to say thank you for joining me. So this is a late night live stream because on the East Coast it's midnight. Where I am, I live in California. It's 9 p.m., so it's really not that late night here. And I know many of you are from overseas, and it's more of a Saturday morning live stream. So thanks for waking up with me. I know a lot of you in Europe, it's like actually pretty early in the morning. So that's great. And I know from my viewer statistics that half of my viewers come from not in the United States. So it's always a great opportunity to talk with you guys. And yeah, I see people are already posting where they're from. I love it when people post at the beginning kind of where everybody's from, just because it's so amazing to see kind of the diversity of countries and cities represented. A lot of people are from Singapore. Seen a lot of those folks, but Australia, wow, that's great. Fair number of people from the United States as usual. But good to see everybody. And like I said in the title, this is just a Q&A live stream. It's Friday. It's week 3 of the quarantine, at least for me here in the United States, in California. I have 3 kids at home, so it's been a long 3 weeks, but good otherwise. So what I think I want to do is open up in the chat to questions. So any questions that you guys have, I'll do my best to answer them. I have some questions I want to ask you guys too. I'm always looking for perspectives especially from folks not in the United States, about kind of what's happening planning-wise in your country, things that might lead to a future video topic. Let's see. So, yes, my gosh. So, yeah, wow, Luxembourg. Flaming Cat. That might be the first time I've seen that in a chat. It's been a while since I've done a live stream. I really should be doing more of these. I'm sorry that I haven't. It's tough to find. So you don't have to call me Mr. Beautiful, which is very funny and kind of you, I guess, or funny. My name's Dave. I should maybe introduce myself to those who don't really know. So I guess I don't really introduce myself in the videos, but my name's Dave. I am a PhD student at University of California, Berkeley, in my 5th and final year. So I'm finishing up my dissertation kind of right now. So Carlos, thank you for the donation. And you have a question, thoughts on McMansions? I think I'm sure you guys are familiar with the blog McMansion Hell. I think those sums up my opinion pretty well. They are kind of architectural monstrosities and not great for the planet. The large lots, take up a lot of land, and the large building kind of footprint means that it costs a lot of money and takes a lot of energy to heat and cool them and things like that. So they're not great for the environment and not my favorite kind of land use. Okay, sorry. So I'm going to try to catch up here with the chat. I'm sorry if I don't get your question. There's a lot of them kind of scrolling through right now. Let's see. So what am I studying? Oh yeah, I'm studying city planning. So I have a couple of degrees in city planning and a degree in architecture already, and I am doing my PhD in city planning as well. So I, I'm not Dr. Beautiful yet. In a few months, hopefully I will be a doctor, but not there yet. And Blue Boy asks, are you in quarantine? Yep. I am sheltering in place with my family we have a townhouse downtown here in Sacramento. Let's see. Opinion on gridded streets. Ben asks, my very first video ever on this channel is about gridded streets, kind of why so many cities in the United States have grids. My general opinion of them is I like them. I like how organized they are. And maybe it's just because I'm from the United States and that's what I'm used to. But yeah, I think that they're sort of a useful thing. I actually like grids that are broken up by the occasional boulevard. Like if you think about Broadway in Manhattan, it's sort of like a really great street because it creates all these interesting squares that cuts through the Manhattan grid. So kind of a mix is good too. Okay, so Greg Green asked, thank you also for the kind donation. Toronto streetcars, awesome, yes or no? So Greg, I've not been to Toronto. I hope to be going in November. So there's a planning academic conference coming up in November that I hope to attend if we are allowed to travel in November. I assume we are, but it's a crazy world. So I hope to ride the streetcars. I've only heard good things about the streetcar system. I think that you guys have a fairly extensive network and have not sort of removed all your lines. Let's see. So yeah, very pro Toronto streetcar because it's like I think you guys have a pretty dense system. Um, Carlos asks, "Are you from Orlando? They call it the city beautiful." Yeah, I didn't realize that when I named the channel. So I named the channel sort of as a kind of a nod to the City Beautiful movement in planning. Not that I'm a fan of the City Beautiful movement, but it just seemed like a nice name for a channel because I think cities are beautiful. But when I was in Orlando, I asked them. I tweeted at them because I want their Twitter handle because they have the Twitter handle just City Beautiful, and I really wanted that handle, and they said I couldn't have it. So I have City Beautiful YT on YouTube on Twitter if you want to follow me. Okay. Oh my gosh. Grids get boring though. Yeah, I know, Devin. Grids do get boring, but that's why I said like occasionally having that boulevard cutting through can be really nice. It has the best of both worlds. Okay. Let's see. Could you do a video on failed Olympic bids? Said Ike. I did do a video on Olympic cities already. Failed Olympic bids would be kind of an interesting one. Yeah, that was one that could be good for an Olympic year, which was this year, but now it will be next year. So I'll keep that in the back of my mind when I think about that for next year because I like to do. I like thinking about Olympic cities. It's a fun topic. All right. Jerome says Dave is a verified numbtot. I'm not a numbtot. I'm not on the group or whatever. I think I'm too old, but I do enjoy the memes coming out of there. Let's see. Christian asks, do you ride public transit a lot? So I live in Sacramento and I go to school in Berkeley. So I take the Amtrak to and from Berkeley every time I go. It's not now. I only go about once a week. It used to be every day, which is an hour and a half each way. So I did ride transit a lot. Yep. But now it's mostly bike and stuff. Okay, let's see. Do I like the Washington, D.C. layout, asked Matt. Yeah, I do. Washington was one of my favorite. It might be my favorite U.S. city, if you really maybe think about it. The sort of universal building height limit, plus the metro system, plus their street grid. It's a good city all around in terms of kind of physical planning. Okay, I'm sorry. I guess moving fast here. Would you consider making a Discord or something similar as Paradox? I've thought about it for like my Patreon patrons, but maybe for everybody too. That could be interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Let me know if you guys would be interested in something like that. I would definitely be into it. Okay, so Megan asks, what's the advantage of getting a PhD versus a master's in urban planning? The difference there is a master's degree is great for your career, like if you want to be a city planner. A PhD is great for if you want to teach urban planning, and that's what I want to do. I'll have a video in the future kind of about my an update on that. But yeah, my goal is to teach city planning in the university level. Okay. So undecided. Thank you again for the donation. And you say I'm from New York City. I like to go to other cities just to see layouts and architecture. My favorite layout is the Vegas Strip and surrounding area. That's interesting. I've never been to Vegas. I live in California. Never been to Vegas. Just never had the reason to. But I will check it out when I'm there. I didn't realize that was sort of like an interesting layout. And Blake, thank you as well. You say, can you do a top 10 car-free cities in America video? Now that's an interesting video topic. Thank you for that one. I was going to do, in the near future here, I was tossing around the idea of doing like a top 10 transit cities in the world, sort of looking at what are the best transit systems in the world, at least like kind of per capita. Like there might be some smaller cities with some really excellent systems as well, but also some of the big ones like your Tokyos and Shanghais and Seouls. But the top 10 cities to like be without a car, I think could be really interesting as well. So thank you for that. That might happen. But the challenge for me, I love getting suggestions for video topics. My challenge is I only can make about like 20-25 videos per year, and there's so many good topics. So I've never had a loss for topics, but thank you for suggesting them. Okay, so Grant, thank you so much. And then you're currently a geography major. Think of city planning as a career. Would you recommend grad school to get more experience in urban planning before entering the workforce? I mean, I would say like maybe take your geography major for a spin on the market. People hire people for planning positions out of undergrad. With a geography major is pretty close, and you might be able to make a good case to an employer. So I would say at least maybe apply for some jobs and see what happens. And if you're not getting anything, or if you're getting feedback, maybe at an interview setting or kind of just on the phone, or they're saying no, that they were looking for skills that like specific to you, specifically you get in a planning program. Yeah, maybe going to get a master's degree would be a good idea. But I always like the idea of kind of working in between your undergrad and master's if you can, just to get that experience. I think it enriches your master's experience. Okay, let's see here. Megan lives in Seattle without a car. Yeah, that's a great city. Burlington, Vermont, car free. That's cool. Let's see. City planning and infectious disease control. Somebody suggested as a video topic. I know that's like a hot topic, obviously, right now. I'm sort of not interested in doing a video on that just because, like, I like to, when I'm working on videos, not think about current events. So I don't really want to spend time thinking about kind of more coronavirus, COVID-19 stuff. But we'll see. I don't know. If you guys really want to hear about it, maybe. Let's see. Oh gosh, turn my mic volume. Sorry. I don't know how to do that. I think it's as high as it goes. So I don't know if this mic is not connected. I'm sorry. I'll try to speak up a little bit. Okay. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm living in Beijing. You're spoiled with transit, Dominique. Totally. Can you explain your background, undergrad and work experience? Yeah, sure. So I got my undergrad in urban studies from Cornell. Worked in the nonprofit sector for a while, went back and got my master's in architecture and another master's in city planning at the University of Oregon, then worked for a few years as a long-range planner here in Sacramento, and then went back and got my PhD, and I'm in my 5th year of that. Okay, let's see here. Let's see. Are you aware of TriMet in Portland is accused of systemic racism? Yeah, I'm sort of familiar with that. I lived in Portland for a year and a half, and I lived in Eugene for 4 years when I was doing my master's degrees. Yeah, I mean, I think the I-5 widening project is a travesty. Like any highway widening at this point is basically supporting the causes of climate change and really need to be reconsidered. And it's surprising that a place like Portland with the history of removing freeways would be considering adding lanes. It's disappointing. Okay, let's see. What's your opinion on the redesigned SAC-RT system? That's a good question. So SAC-RT is the transit system in Sacramento. I don't ride RT all that often. I will sometimes ride the light rail to the train station to catch my Amtrak. So I don't have a lot to say on it. But I'm glad that they're kind of obviously putting effort into their lines and stuff. Okay, let's see. Gosh, so many questions. I'm trying to get to all of them here. Thank you, Space Peanut. Do you listen to the There's Your Problem podcast? I think McMansion Hell Writers on it in episode 4. Is that the one by Do Not Eat? I have not listened to it if that's the case. I've heard good things, on Twitter and things. To be honest, I'm not really a podcast person. I don't listen to many podcasts. So it just hasn't, I haven't listened. It's not that I haven't listened to it because it's not good. It's just, I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm much more of a YouTube person, visual person. Matthew Thompson's a planning grad student at Berkeley. All the planning summer internships have been canceled. Help, what should I do? Oh no, I didn't think about that. The summer internships. God. Sorry, Matthew. I don't think there's a good answer to that one. I think all of us are in a bit of a bind thanks to this whole situation. Hopefully you have another year, another summer, which you can do an internship. I don't know. I guess it's between your first and second year probably. Oh, I don't know. I'm sorry. Thomas, thank you. What best meets the ideals of urban planning? What city best meets the ideals of urban planning? I don't know. I don't think there's any one ideal set of urban planning. There's a book by Kevin Lynch called Good Urban Form, where he sort of lays down kind of the dimensions of sort of good urban design, at least. And they're all so general. And it's hard to make kind of a decision about what is good urban planning without making a value judgment about a culture or kind of a way of living. Like, how do I know what's best, the best city planning, say, in like the Middle East? It's a very different climate. It's a very different culture. So I don't think there is one universal good urban plan. I think that maybe the best urban planning is the one kind of influenced by community input at the local level to meet the needs of the folks who live there. Okay, so Elizabeth asks, America's rural small towns are declining. What can be done about that? Yeah, that would be a great topic for a video. I grew up in a small town that's having, same problems as I grew up in a small town in the Midwest. Same problem kind of in a lot of the small towns of kind of what do they do when they're shrinking and, maybe their biggest employers have left. I grew up in a town on the Great Lakes that used to do shipbuilding. and all the shipbuilding left. So it's a real tough transition, and I don't think there are any easy answers to that. I actually did my undergraduate honors thesis on that topic, just because I wanted to know what was going on in my town and kind of what could be done, and the situation is bleak. Checking in from Wisconsin. Where from Wisconsin are you from? Alec asks. I'm from Door County, so that's where I'm from, if you know. Okay, let's see. Opinion on Boston and its relative lack of urban planning. Personally, I love it. Boston may be the most embarrassing city I've never been to, because everybody's like, you've never been to Boston? I need to get to Boston. It has a lack of sort of formal urban planning, I guess, but I hear really great things, and I like the human scale of its kind of street network. I think that's the right idea, but I need to go visit it to make more solid thoughts. Okay, let's see. Do you know if there's a lot of jobs for urban transportation planning in Sacramento? Brian asks, and I think it's been doing pretty well so far lately. I think there have been, it's a pretty good market for an urban planner, but with COVID-19, I don't know what's going to be coming in the next year or two. Okay. Will you make a video about city blueprint describing the basic various areas and a foundation of cities, how cities are founded in Europe? That could be a cool topic too. Yeah, like a history of cities are founded in Europe. That would be cool. Okay, so let's see. Sorry, what do you think of the Portland Southwest Corridor light rail project, since it's getting a lot of backlash? Said Blake. This is interesting. So I did an internship for TriMet where I worked on that project, and this was 2013, 2012. So that was a long time ago, 8 years ago now, on the Southwest Corridor project. And honestly, I haven't been following the backlash on it too much. I'm assuming that you mean places like Tigard and Tualatin are not into it. Back then, they were sort of the thought was that if you build a light rail out to the suburbs, homeless people are gonna flood into Tigard or something. So I don't know what the latest is on that. I'm sorry. I should be keeping up on it, since I have former colleagues who are probably still working on that project. Okay, Thor asks, thank you, Thor. How should cities address housing crises in their metro areas? Also, how could small towns be more accessible and livable to people without cars? How should cities address housing crises within their metro? That's two questions. Okay, I'm gonna answer the second one first. I always think that in any city, there should be some area in which you should be able to go car free. I think that's I think in a lot of larger cities that's true. If sort of the downtown area, and there's usually a neighborhood around, which is kind of got some apartment buildings and cool shops and things, and you could sort of bike around in that area. At least all the cities I've lived in have that. And I think it could be true in small towns too, even if it's a little bit of a smaller district like that at the center. So I think it's really thinking about kind of where do you already have areas that are sort of conducive to that type of living. So the sort of 2-3 story mixed use buildings in kind of a smaller town, where you can have the mix of shops and living and offices and things, so you could get around without a car. But I think even in a lot of small towns, they have that, and it's just about making it, doing things like adding bike lanes, making it safer to walk and bike and things like that. Okay. Sorry, Ryan Joy. Do you have any take on SB 50, 827, or the policy of transit-oriented upzoning generally? Yeah, this is a big one. I honestly don't. All these questions. I mean, I think generally I am for transit-oriented upzoning. I'm glad you asked me generally, because that generally in the case. The bills, these SB 50 and the kind of the subsequent bills or the previous bills, I haven't been keeping up on all the details, to be honest. But yeah, there's a lot in California. There's a lot of municipalities that go out of their way to sort of avoid upzoning, including Berkeley, where I go to school. Some of the areas in Berkeley, for example, like at the North Berkeley BART station. Around the North Berkeley BART station are just single-family homes, which is ridiculous, and those areas needed to be upzoned to have more apartments because they're right on a BART station. So I think sometimes local control can be good, but sometimes the state needs to force the locals a hand to achieve regional goals around kind of emissions targets and things like that. Okay, let's see. Let's see. People really have to get on their bikes, says Professor Frank. I agree. Do I have a favorite city planner? Asked Caged. That's a good question. I don't think I have a favorite city planner. I know lots of really nice city planners that I've worked with, colleagues. I don't know of any famous ones that are my favorite. But that's an interesting question. Now I'm going to be thinking about that when I go to sleep. Why don't you like SimCity 2013? It's better than SimCity 2000. I've tried SimCity 2013 like way back, like in 2013, and I didn't enjoy it. I like SimCity 4 if we're talking SimCities. That's the best one. It's useful games and more. I do like City Skylines. It's fun too. I played that a little bit. Jeff Speck says, Charles Sheen, is that your favorite one? Yeah, he seems pretty cool. I've not met him in person. I like his books. Walkable City. I recommend that actually for people who are kind of interested in the topic and they're sort of starting out. Walkable City is like a really good book to kind of get your kind of brain around modern city planning. Okay, let's see here. Best way to get into city planning. Oh my gosh. City planning master's, even though I did a different bachelor. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So when I did a master's degree in city planning, I was the only one in my cohort who had an undergraduate degree in city planning. City planning master's programs generally assume that you will have a different degree. So don't worry about that when you apply. Bradshaw Studio, thank you. I wish Bend, Oregon was more bike friendly. You know, I've been to Bend once, and I thought it was pretty bike friendly. I guess, so I did recently, I don't know, not recently, I guess probably in 2013, I did a design guide about sort of complete street retrofits, and I think Bend was in it, or at least we considered it, because it has like a raised bike lane or something cool. Anyway, they have some cool bike infrastructure in Bend, but I guess maybe it's not overall very bike friendly. I didn't ride my bike there, so I don't know. Okay, let's see. Do I play City Skylines? Yeah, sometimes. I play with my kids. They kind of like it. Okay. Let's see. Hi, City Beautiful. Love your content. I was wondering what your thoughts on Planetizen courses is. If you've ever heard of them. Yes, I've heard of Planetizen courses. When I was a planner, my office actually had a subscription so we could learn. Like we could take whatever course we wanted on Planetizen courses. And I didn't take any, but I know my colleagues did and found them interesting. And I actually know a couple people who have done courses on Planetizen. Like they produce them. And they're really good. Like the folks who do those courses are really top notch. So I imagine that the courses there are really good. Let's see. Thoughts on SAC RTS Big Pig? As I said before, I don't really ride it that much. I mostly bike around Sacramento or walk. Okay, let's see. What's my opinion on city planning in Japan, especially when compared to American urban planning? So I don't know about the actual planning process in Japan, except that I know it tends to be a little bit more top down than here in the United States. I will say that the urban form in like cities like Tokyo are phenomenal. The level of density, but I feel like fairly livable density in a lot of places is really cool. And just seeing pictures of their kind of narrow streets, it's just dreamy. I love their narrow streets. So I want to get to, I think Tokyo might be like a top 5 city for me to want to visit internationally right now. I want to be there. Okay, let's see here. Do you think cities like San Antonio are too far gone to become walkable? I haven't been to San Antonio, but I don't think any city's too far gone to become walkable. You can make it happen. And cities can change faster than you think. I've been in Sacramento here for 7 years, and my neighborhood alone has changed so fast and added so many places that are easily walkable and bikeable, and it can happen. Let's see here. Fan of Parks and Rec, Charlie Traeger. Yeah, so I am a big fan of Parks and Rec. I guess it's sort of a shameless plug, but on the streaming service Nebula, which I'm often promoting on my channel, I did a video on Parks and Rec and basically why I like it so much. Let's see. And I should just say too, I like Parks and Rec because I think it actually is, it's a fairly accurate portrayal, I think, of how city governments have to interact with the public a lot of the times. And their community meetings crack me up because of how eerily similar they can be. Let's see. What jobs can a geographer get if they love maps? If you have a geography degree, that's a good question. I actually don't know many geographers, so I can't answer that question, but sometimes they get jobs in planning because I know some people who have that degree. Are traffic circles over or underrated? Asked Jacob. Thank you so much, Jacob. I would say that they are adequately rated. Because I know that they get some hype for being a really useful way of kind of not putting in traffic control devices like traffic lights. They can kind of smoothly control traffic. So they're great for that. I will say that there are some real design problems around pedestrians and bicycles with traffic circles, and I have not I've seen like a few in like the Netherlands that do a better job than the ones here in the United States around like kind of providing bike lanes and things. But I think anytime when you have cars that don't stop or like aren't sort of required to stop, it just gets tricky because then it's sort of a negotiation with bikes and peds. And if they're going too fast, bikes and peds will lose that negotiation. So it's a tricky situation. But I do get why they're good from sort of a car point of view. All right. Undecided is asking Pierre L'Enfant or Robert Moses. That's an interesting question. Boy, oh boy. They're both kind of bad in their own way. Robert Moses, I think he's kind of famous for doing things like building the bridges to beaches too low so the buses can't get out there. So like people of color can't access beaches and things like the public beaches. Pierre L'Enfant like cut avenues through like the neighborhoods of Paris that are most likely to revolt. So it's sort of like a submission tool. I mean, they both are just kind of bad in that way. But I guess like at least Pierre L'Enfant, like the urban design around the boulevards was pretty darn good. So I might give him the nod. Okay, what do I think of shared spaces as Chudley? I think they're great. Like the ones like the shared kind of streets or like Woonerfs in the Netherlands, they're awesome. That's great. Marius, thank you so much, Marius. Love your channel. We ever consider doing a video on European city planning, especially in comparison to U.S. city planning? What can we learn from each other? That's a great question. I am not an expert on European city planning. I did do some time in Italy, in Rome, but that was a long time ago. But that would be a really fun one. I should find like a planner in Europe and kind of do maybe like a collaboration video or something, because that would be fun. I really want to do more videos on Europe. I want to do more videos abroad. Just the challenges, they take longer for me to make because I need to do more research. Like doing videos on stuff in the States here is like second nature to me, and doing any videos sort of about like foreign cities, it just takes a little bit more time. But I love doing them because I learn a lot too. Let's see here. Let's see. I love your channel. Thank you. Sorry, I'm just trying to scroll through here because I want to make sure I get questions from a lot of people here. Come to Montevideo. I love you to see the city. Pedro, I've been to Montevideo and I did love the city. I was only there for a day. I was in Buenos Aires for longer, and I was surprised by how charming your city was. Oh my gosh, I was there in the evening. It was just a great time. I loved it. Great city. Let's see here. But Caro's bio of Robert Moses is an awesome read for anyone interested in planning in New York, said Professor Frank. Yes, it's called The Power Broker. It's like the book. I regret this. When I was an undergrad, I avoided taking a course where you had to read the entire book, The Power Broker, because I was a lazy undergraduate student. I didn't want to read that gigantic book, but now I regret it because I probably don't have time to get to it now as an adult, but I really wish I would have done it when I was an undergrad and had the time. Let's see here. What other YouTube channels would you recommend for your viewers? So I love Jay Foreman. Tomorrow, Jay Foreman is going to release another video on London. So Unfinished London, his series. It is so good. I think he is what I wish this channel would be like. I wish I was funnier like him. Basically. So he just does a great series. All of his videos tend to be kind of London centric, but the basic premises are all kind of city planning 101. So you get a lot out of it. If you like this channel, City Beautiful, you would like Jay Foreman's channel. So cool. Thoughts on Denver? I really enjoyed Denver. I was there a couple years ago. Its downtown is obviously booming. It's crazy, like in the Lodo area and like around Union Station. They're gonna have some challenges around affordability. I really wanted to get to, oh gosh, they redid that airport into like a new urbanist community, and I want to check it out. But lots of cool stuff happening in Denver. I'd love to get back. Teaching the Code, thank you so much, asked, will you cover improving Detroit, my hometown? Also, could you cover how the quality of life in coming in similar cities where we live, visit us? Yeah, Detroit is on my list as well of great cities to do. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening in Detroit. I mean, I think the most interesting thing is that I think Detroit is starting to bounce back a little bit, but it's very uneven, and you have situations where neighborhoods are even towards the city center now are coming very well off, while you still have a lot of segregation by race and income. So there's a story there for sure about sort of how you rebound, and I think it would be interesting to compare like Detroit's sort of slow rebound to a city like Pittsburgh, which kind of relied on its meds and eds to rebound a little bit faster. Anyway, definitely an interesting topic. Yes, Jay Foreman is great. I'm glad that some folks here know about Jay. Let's see. What's your take on Houston's planning? Is famous for no zoning and many other odd anomalies. Ask Glacier Pause. Thanks for the question. Yeah, so Houston doesn't have zoning in like sort of a traditional sense, but it relies on things like codes, covenants, and deed restrictions to achieve many of the same ends. So they do have some sort of planning control. It's not like the Wild West in terms of planning, though I will say that like it's probably less than your normal city, but they still have a way of doing land use control. But yeah, that is probably like that's like a top 2. I need to do a video on that city in the United States because I get that question all the time. I keep hoping to like visit Houston and like go and do a video like on location. The National Planning Conference for the American Planning Association was in Houston this year. I couldn't make it, but it got canceled. Of course, it was scheduled for this month due to the virus. So I'm wondering if maybe next year or later this year they would get the conference and I might be able to go and do a video on Houston while I'm there. Let's see. The Sunny. Respond to my question, please. Sorry, I missed it. Sorry, it's scrolling fast. I'm trying to catch everybody. 4 Trains MTA asks, what's it like to work as an urban planner? Is it hard? Does it consume a lot of time? And how do you get a year from urban planning? Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about what I did. So I was a long-range consultant land use planner. So what I did was cities in California have to prepare a general plan or a comprehensive plan. They have to have one on file, and they have to update theirs periodically. But they update theirs like every 10 or 15 years, and they all forget like how to do a city plan or a long-range plan. So they hire firms like the one I worked for to come in and collaborate with them. So they have a sense for the kind of the local planning context. My firm has a sense for how to do a long-range plan and all the sort of state laws that the plan needs to follow and things like that. And then we work together. So like the projects will last 2, 3, 4 years, and they're big projects. But I would then go into a community and we would develop so it's essentially a land use plan, but it deals with environment, transportation, economic development. It's called California is like the blueprint for planning in a community. So it's really fun. So day in, day out, you're doing things like writing land use policies or working on community outreach. You have to do meetings in the evenings, go to city council meetings or running community workshops. So I was a consultant, so I went to different communities. So there was a fair amount of travel. Like I was at least once or twice a month, at least, traveling places. And there were people in my office who traveled a lot more to go to meetings. But it's rewarding. And like when you get to go to meetings and things, you get to meet with the general public, which is a lot of fun, actually. It can be frustrating too. Let's see. Okay, let's see here. Thoughts on how Milwaukee's expanded its downtown immensely in the past years? Yeah, Benzie boy. Like the whole the Park East Freeway teardown and like the Deer District, which I did talked about in my latest video. Yeah, Milwaukee's been doing a lot. I think it's the challenge for Milwaukee is not so much the kind of the downtown growth, which has obviously been successful. It's just like its tradition of sort of segregation. It's one of the most segregated cities in the U.S. and that sort of needs to figure out how to sort of spread that wealth more equitably. Okay, Jacob. Thank you, Jacob. Would a gondola transit system like the new one in Walt Disney World work in an urban sprawl cities like Phoenix? They're cool and not common in the U.S. So yeah, so first of all, I did ride that gondola. It's in my Disney Transit video, which I posted at the beginning of this year. And I've also ridden in one in Medellin, Colombia, which I did a video on like 2 years ago. So I know a thing or two about gondolas. And the challenge of gondolas is they can't be like ramped up or ramped down based on like rush hour, right? You have the same number of gondola cars running at all times back and forth. So you either need to build a system that like has enough for rush hour and then is sort of empty, on non-peak times, or sort of just deal with long lines and the fact that it can't deal with rush hour traffic. And most cities just sort of deal with like long lines of rush hour traffic. So that's the challenge of them. They're not really high capacity transit. They're best deployed in areas with like a significant topographical challenge. Like in Colombia, they have cities often like built right up to a hillside. So they have the gondolas going up a hill. And that makes a lot of sense. from that point of view. The way Disney did it, like I think is probably like less expensive than like expanding their monorail system. So I understand why they did it for that reason. But like I don't think it's actually great transit in a lot of ways. Okay, let's see. Last question: how much money do you get for a year as an urban planner? Asked 4Trains MTA. I would say it's like a typical white collar job. I'm not gonna tell you like what my salary was, but like if it's like a similar to like like an accountant, I'm sure, or like something like that. Like it's just a pretty standard middle class job. You're not gonna get rich being an urban planner. I'll say that. Okay. Let's see. Any ideas for an abandoned mall area as Konami, especially if it's near an airport, residential area, and somewhat major road? Yeah, those are questions. Tough one. I would check. I would check out the book "Retrofitting Suburbia." It's a great book. It has examples of mall retrofits. I've seen them being retrofitted to include housing, office uses, like a library. So they can be turned into lots of different things. I don't have specific suggestions. It kind of comes down to your community's need. But I would check out Retrofitting Suburbia because it's just a really cool book about that topic and can give you some ideas. Richard, thank you so much. How should climate affect city planning? Yes, climate's the big topic right now in city planning schools. Lots of thought around that. I know the students are very interested in thinking about the climate impacts around city planning. Yeah, it's a big topic. Like I just reviewed a studio course where they're really thinking about that and how to deal with things like like sea level rise. So, I go to school in the Bay Area, and their students are very concerned about things like, what would happen if like the sea level rose like 5 meters, 10 meters? There would be parts of the Bay Area that would be inundated, right? So how do we think about that? So lots of thought going into that. I mean, there's of course like cities in California now are required to have a climate action plan. I don't think they're actually technically required, but they basically need it for all sorts of funding. And cities around the United States are doing climate action planning. So thinking about the ways they can have policies to help their cities be more climate resilient. And I mean, a lot of common policies include things like all of the fleet vehicles for the city government will be kind of electric by a certain time, or all of the new buildings will be LEED Platinum, right, that get built. So thinking about the ways that they can sort of be more climate friendly. The more challenging thing is getting like the residents of their city to say, put away their cars and get into walk and take transit and things like that. That's where the real change is going to happen, not kind of what the local governments can do like just by themselves. And that's like here in California, that's something that planners are thinking about all the time. How we can get regions to kind of get people out of their cars. Okay, let's see. Oh my gosh, so many. How close should a freeway come to a city center? Ideally, how close is too close? We have one coming within 2 kilometers of my local downtown. I'm not sure it's the best idea. James, I don't know where you're living, but as far away as possible, I would say would be the best solution for highways near a urban area. Vancouver is a great example of one that really kept all real freeways out of their city limits, and it's an incredible city in terms of livability, and a high proportion of its residents use transit, which I think is a direct result of it being far more difficult to drive a car into the central city. So as far away as possible. Charles Sheen, hey Dave, can you do a video on form-based codes? Yeah, that'd be a good one. I've been meaning to do another video on zoning. I did one on kind of sort of ending single-family zoning, but yeah, sort of alternatives to zoning would be a great one. And form-based codes is like a leading contender, along with like performance zoning. Okay. Eduardo asks, what are the main differences between Berkeley's and MIT's graduate urban planning programs? Greetings from Mexico City. So Berkeley and MIT, for those who don't know, like if the graduate programs are like the 2 top programs according to like the lists of the United States urban planning programs. So they sort of duke it out for like the best candidates for graduate programs. Like they want all the top students and things like that. And like the difference is, it seems that I don't know a lot about the MIT program, but it seems like it's a bigger program for sure. It's a little bit more technical, I think, which makes sense because MIT is a little bit more technical school. I know that lately MIT's scholarships have been more generous than Berkeley's because Berkeley's been losing out some of its top talent because the Bay Area is just so expensive, and because Berkeley is a public school and MIT is private, Berkeley just has fewer resources for its students, unfortunately. So those are the big ones. But if you go to either place, you're going to get a great education. Like, they're just excellent programs. Anders, thank you. How do you integrate green space into roofs, streets, etc.? I guess I don't know, like in like new development or existing development, but roofs are, yeah, you suggested a great way to integrate green space. Most places have sort of park dedication requirements. So if you're building a new development, you have to like dedicate a certain number of acres or square kilometers of park based on how many residents or office workers or something are going to be in that area. That's one way to integrate green space. Other retrofits are you can do things like community gardens in empty lots, which is like a popular way of doing things like that. Yeah, I mean, in my area, we just added a dog park in a vacant lot, which is great. Okay, let's see here. Dylan, Dryan asks, what do you think about bus rapid transit? It kind of becomes a cheap alternative to transit in several major cities. I have no problems with bus rapid transit. What I think is most important is dedicated lanes. So for light rail and bus rapid transit, do you have dedicated lanes, signal priority, things that make it fast, all door boarding, things like that. So anything that makes transit fast and efficient, that can be light rail, that can be bus rapid transit. I think the argument for light rail is that people say, like, with a fixed rail, it might encourage more development around the stops because the idea is that, oh, well, the rail's not going away. But a bus line might go away. It might disappear from that street, and all of a sudden the transit's gone, and a real estate developer, doesn't want to put money into a place where the transit might be transient. But a good bus rapid transit system is going to have a lot of dedicated infrastructure too. So anyway, I don't care bus or train so long as it's fast and efficient. Sorry, I had to take a little break there. Let's see. Are subways too expensive to build anymore, SP73? Boy, it sure seems like it in the United States. And that's a billion-dollar question as to why that is. It's a complicated question. But we need to be building more. Okay, let's see here. Sorry. Paradox Addicts. City Skylines, man. Try it. I have tried it. It's great. I'm not I don't have a ton of time to play games between like a job or being in school and being a parent and things like that and making these videos. But I do like the game. Okay, David, thank you. How did you choose to use a map of Detroit for your video intros? Greetings from the Motor City. Yeah, so first of all, I mean, I like Detroit, but what I did was I had a designer do that, and I sent him a few city grids, and he chose Detroit because he thought it was the most good-looking grid of the bunch, which I sort of agree. I think it's a fairly awesome city plan, but that's how it became that way. I didn't specifically choose it. I'm sorry, Detroiter. Metro Rail. Sorry, NBA fan. I'm not familiar with that project. Let's see here. Megan Murphy, thoughts on Seattle? So I love Seattle. Like I said, I used to live in the Pacific Northwest. There are some huge challenges around gentrification and Amazon buses and light rail and things like that. It's been, I am a Portland Timbers soccer fan, so it pains me to say. I don't know of any studies on this. I'm sure there are studies on this, though. I tend to think not. That's just my kind of thought on it. It's just the casinos that I know that are in like urban areas, they don't seem to sort of address the urban fabric very nicely. A lot of them seem very like, by their nature, they have to be sort of inward focused, right? Like you have to keep out like minors and things like that. And casinos don't want you like looking outside the casino. They want you inside gambling money. So they just sort of have this fortress architecture to them from what I've seen that just isn't like they're not great neighbors. And then I don't know. I mean, I guess like they sort of liven up the nightlife, but anyway, that's my thoughts. I don't have strongly held opinions, but I seem like a casual negative. Christopher, what do you think about Pittsburgh in all caps? I have not been to Pittsburgh, but I know friends in Pittsburgh who will go on and on about how great Pittsburgh is. And everything I've seen, I've read, I've heard about Pittsburgh is that it's been an amazing transformation from Rust Belt to Meds and Eds, beautiful neighborhoods, affordable housing, the hills, it's everything is great. So I really, really want to check out Pittsburgh. I think that if like I had to like pick any city in the country to live, like if I could live anywhere, Pittsburgh would be on the list of cities I would visit before making that decision because I've heard so many good things about it. Okay, Marius, thank you. Thoughts on Boring Company, all hyper opportunity. I did a video on the Boring Company, I don't know, like a year or two ago. I think it's all hype. Or it's just like not useful. Like he's made a boring machine that might be able to do it cheaper, but the tunnels are smaller and they're not at the same sort of level of safety as traditional tunnel boring machines. Like the tunnels are not as safe. And if he includes transit, he's basically just reinvented the subway. So I'm really unclear as to like what his like long-term plan here is, except for maybe trying to get more Teslas on the road and like making them like Tesla expressways or something. But I'm all for it if they're truly transit only, because he's just basically convinced cities to build subways. Okay. Yeah, but mostly 100% Flash. I agree, Professor Frank, currently. The only thing is that Elon might just back his way into like reinventing the subway, and that would be cool. Okay, let's see here. I'll give a shout out to Tampa. I've only like been through Tampa a few times. Like I haven't been to Tampa a lot, but I'll just give the shout out to Tampa. Go Tampa. Let's see here. How many developed rural areas have been taken over by strip malls? For instance, Southern Maryland is being taken over by strip malls due to rapid population growth due to a major naval base. This is something that irks me, and it's something that I don't really have a sufficient answer for. But like, I always feel like when I talk to like short-range planners, like the planners who approve development projects like strip malls, I always get the sense that they treat it like it's an inevitability. Like they just simply have to approve these projects, and the best they can do is maybe get some concessions to make them slightly better designed. And I know that there's pressure there because strip malls generate sales tax revenue, which goes to pay for like municipal projects. Like it goes into the local government coffer. So local governments want retail, right? That it helps their bottom line. And I think a lot of them are afraid that if they say no to strip malls, they won't get that money. But I don't know. Like these cities need backbones. They need backbones to say like, no, we only want good development. And if you, like you said, if a place is growing in population because of like a naval base or something, the market will be there, and businesses will want to figure out a way to sell to those people, even if it means kind of rethinking their designs. That's just my opinion. Okay. Hey, Volkgeist. Fellow standard creator. Thank you so much. My gosh. How do you feel about New England separately? Do you know of any small towns that are walkable and not car-centric nightmares? So I went to school in upstate New York, which is like sort of New England adjacent, and I spent a little bit of time in New England. I don't know, like I spent some time in Portland, Maine, and I felt like the central Portland, Maine, it was pretty walkable. And the person in the chat here, Professor Frank, keeps mentioning Burlington, Vermont, and I'll take his word for it. But I think my experience with New England small towns is that they sort of have an advantage because a lot of them were built before the car, so they sort of were inherently walkable. Like if you look at smaller towns like out here in California or even in the Midwest where I grew up, they might have like a very small core that is walkable because again it was like built like in the 1800s or something, but then they rapidly become sort of car-centric nightmares. But New England small towns, I think a lot of these small towns are quite walkable, at least the ones I've been in contact with. Okay, thank you, Thor. How often do you use Spanish in your work? So I don't speak Spanish, but when I was a city planner, we absolutely translated, I think, practically every public document into Spanish. It is that critical. Here in California, I worked in cities where a majority of the population spoke Spanish at home, like that was their primary language. So it's just second nature here, at least in California, to always be kind of having that bilingual, and then in some cases multilingual. Like I did projects in the Bay Area where we needed Chinese, Vietnamese, like all sorts of different languages. It's really important for community outreach and not only to translate materials, but to like figure out how to do outreach to other languages. Like I did a project where we were advertising on Spanish language radio all the time because that was a great way to reach the community. Let's see here. Okay. Is Old Sacramento a prime example of how to revitalize historic areas into modern places of leisure? Asked Sergio. Okay, so Old Sacramento, for people who don't know, it's sort of like they sort of preserved slash rebuilt like a historic Old West town, like the Old West Sacramento. So for those of you who may not know, Sacramento was the western terminus of the Transcontinental Railroad. So we have a strong railroad like pioneer history here in Sacramento, and there's a district of maybe like 8 or 10 city blocks that all look like they're from the 1800s. I think it's cool. Like it's definitely like an entertainment and touristy district, and I know they're trying to change that. I mean, some people do live in Old Sacramento. I don't know. I don't have strong thoughts about like it's it feels to me like a little Disney World esque right now. I know that they're trying to change that. If you live in Sacramento, they're rebranding to Old Sacramento Waterfront and try to re-engage with the riverfront and do some projects that kind of bring more Sacramentans into Old Sac instead of it being just a tourist trap. So, yeah, so I'm excited about the progress there. Pedro, thank you so much. Mr. Dog James asks, thank you. Do you think we've entered into a new era in regards to public funding for things like transit infrastructure? I mean, I guess like with the COVID-19 infrastructure package, I was pleasantly surprised by how much went to transit and things like that. Thank you so much for that, Congress. I mean, I think that unless we have more democratic control over Congress and the White House, it's gonna be slim pickings. I know that the Tiger grants, which are one of the primary funding sources for new transit projects, has been severely curtailed under this current administration. So it's been a bad situation the last few years. Also, we have a president who holds grudges and won't fund for certain states' projects like California. So we need a bit of a change of regime here, I think. Volkguy says, no offense, but I find Burlington to be a very unpleasant place. Watch out, Professor Frank. I think he's starting to pick a fight with you in the comments. But I don't know. I've seen pictures of Burlington. It seems very nice, but of course pictures are not the same as being there. Okay, let's see here. Laura asks, I'm an urban planning grad student, and when I tell people what I study, I get blank stares. How do we get the general public to know what planning is and why it's important for them to understand? That is why part of the reason I'm doing this channel is I want people to better understand what urban planning is and like how it affects their lives. We do a pretty terrible job, like as a society, educating people about urban planning. You never have to really learn about urban planning in school, like in your kindergarten through 12th grade, at least here in the United States. It might be different elsewhere. But here in the US, you don't ever get any actual education in urban planning unless you go to college and then happen to go to college that has an urban planning program and happen to take a class in it. So yeah, that's why I want this channel, is to like make it more accessible to people and kind of meeting people where they are. So YouTube is the largest educational platform on the planet. So teaching people about urban planning on YouTube is like for me, like that's where you need to be. Like that's where people are, and that's where you need to be teaching them. But otherwise, like telling people what you do as an urban planner, yeah, I mean, I've definitely heard those blank stares, seen those blank stares when I tell people I'm an urban planner. They're like, what does that mean? And you take that as an opportunity to educate people about planning. I mean, I'm obviously passionate about talking about planning, and if somebody gives me a blank stare about urban planning, they're just inviting me to talk their ear off for 20 minutes about planning, whether they like it or not. So, okay, Pedro, thank you again. How will coronavirus affect our relationship with the public sphere? Will we become reclusive, or will we experience a revival of public space and sociability? Yeah, I think that's one of the most tragic things about this coronavirus right now, is I'm afraid to be out in public in some sense. Like I have kids in here in California, you're definitely supposed to shelter in place, but you are allowed out to do some, I take a walk for exercise. And I take my kids out for a walk. It's like taking my dogs out for a walk. Taking my kids out for a walk like once a day, just to sort of get them moving and get their energy out. But it's hard when I have to remind them stay 6 feet away from people. It had to find a place that's not crowded or in any way. And it's sort of makes you feel different. Your relationship to public space has changed in this, and not for the better, and it makes me really sad. I hope that, the thing is, I wish that there would be a time, we could say May 1st, it's all over, and we can go out and do everything back the way it was, and there'll be huge block parties and everybody will be hugging each other in the streets. But I think the reality of this is that we're going to sort of slowly go back to normal, like over a long period of months. And there's not going to be one sort of rip off the Band-Aid, exciting, like we can return to the public sphere. So that makes me nervous because it does maybe make it more likely that we'll have a slight change of attitude around how we use public space. But generally speaking, in broader, longer time frames, I think we will return to normal, and I think cities won't be impacted by this in the long term. I think cities are just so resilient, and I always think of cities as sort of our natural habitat. I mean, I hate people who think that like, oh, people belong like out in the woods or whatever, in nature, or in the forests. I mean, people do. People need nature. Like nothing against nature, but cities feel to me like our natural habitat as humans because we're such a social species. We can't stay away from each other, and cities like help us be together. So I think long term we can't help but be together, and cities help us do it, and cities will always be around. Okay, that's my 2 cents on that. Okay. Totally asked, at what age did I become interested in city planning? I was really lucky that in high school, or like when I was like 17, I had a teacher who gave me a book. The book was called Natural Capitalism. I mean, the chapters of that book were all kind of like whatever, but there was a couple chapters. One was on Curitiba, Brazil, which talked about how like architects there sort of reformed the city. Like they came up with like innovative bus rapid transit systems and how they like did all sorts of great sort of sustainable city practices. And then that piqued my interest when I was 17. Like, oh wow, like I was like young, I want to make a difference in the world, and like at the scale of this city was really interesting to me. And like you could do things like with community outreach and design and kind of policy and law, and like kind of all comes together in a really fascinating way. So when I was 17, I sort of got that push, and then I went to school for it as an undergrad. Okay, Austin, are smaller Midwestern cities that are building streetcars doing it for transit or just to get developers to build commuter rail instead? Well, if you're a smaller Midwestern city, I guess I don't know what you exactly mean by smaller. Like a Milwaukee, is that smaller than like a Chicago, or are you talking like an Akron or something? I haven't kept track of which cities are planning streetcars. But I will say that a lot of cities are following the Portland model, which is doing it a lot of the reason for development. I think that like a smaller U.S. city may not need commuter rail or be harder to justify. Commuter rail generally has lowish ridership compared to like heavy rail or light rail. So anyway, yeah, I don't know. Streetcars to me are not the greatest transit tool. I lived in Portland, like I said. I lived a block or two from a streetcar stop in Northwest Portland, and I commuted into Central Portland. I walked, and I was faster than the streetcar a lot of times. So I'm not a huge fan of streetcars for transit. I think cities who do it for development may be successful, but may not be. I've heard of mixed reviews since the Portland example. I would just say if you're interested in transit and you're a smaller Midwestern city, spending that money on buses is probably the best bang for your buck. What's my favorite area of urban planning? Asked Michael. So I was a land use planner, and my studies right now are in urban design. So I would say that is sort of those two are my favorite areas. I do my research in the active transportation planning, like kind of how land use planning influences the provision and use of active transportation infrastructure. So that's really where my head's at. I like thinking about the ways we can plan for bikes and peds. Let's see. Okay. Let's see here. I'm gonna have to wrap this up pretty quick, guys. It's, oh my gosh, almost an hour later. Just a couple more questions. Let's see. Yeah, Professor Frank, streetcar is not one line, a network. I agree, a network. Let's see. Buses waste money. Vans do better. No, I disagree, Trues. So the biggest economic situation around any transit, like the biggest economic consideration is paying the bus driver or paying the person driving the transit. Unless you have like a system like Vancouver SkyTrain, you're going to have somebody on that train that you have to pay. Or that bus you have to pay. And if you have vans, you have fewer numbers of people that person you're paying can shuttle around. If you have buses, that one person you're paying can shuttle 50 or 60 people around. So bigger buses are better than smaller buses in terms of like actually having like an efficient system that carries a lot of people. What you want to think about is getting a great grid, increasing improving headways, like reducing headways, like so the buses come faster, making transfers seamless, things like that. But buses can do it. Buses, like they move more people in many cities than light rail and heavy rail. Okay, let's see here. Michael Gilroy, thank you so much. What do you think of tolling on the I-5 bridge and PDX to reduce traffic? Yeah, I mean, I think if it's sort of like tolling as a way of doing like congestion pricing, yeah, for sure. I think all sorts of cities should be doing congestion pricing. I think it was Stockholm that does like it really well, the congestion pricing really well, like where they set up tolls like in all the major roads around central Stockholm, and like driving went down so much and the city became much more livable. So yeah, I mean, I think making driving more uncomfortable financially or otherwise is important. We need to have a carrot and stick model, right? We need to make biking and transit use and walking easier, and we also need to make driving harder. So it's things like implementing tolls or making parking more expensive or making parking more scarce, things like that. Okay, Portland here. What do you think of the Max? I love the Max. I rode the Max when I lived there. But again, I was a big bus fan. I rode the 15 bus from Southeast Portland when I lived in that area all the way into the central city. The 15 bus is my favorite bus line, but the Max is great too. Richard, thank you. Could a planned sci-fi indoor city in the Midwest be built upon the promise of cheaper housing and remote work? What would your plan like? Sci-fi indoor city in the Midwest, cheaper housing. I don't know how you make cheaper housing if the entire city's indoors. Like, would you need some sort of shelter? That seems like it would add overhead costs. And I don't know why you need to be indoors. Like, Midwest weather's not that bad. But like, I think that the Midwest can sell themselves as like affordable, like being a more affordable place than the coast. I mean, I think the housing affordability problem is really hurting California and the East Coast as well. And hopefully Midwestern cities can find ways to benefit from that. Remote work is a good point. So the person who edits the video, who helps me edit the videos here on this channel, lives in Cleveland, which is a much more affordable city to live in. He could be anywhere in the world, but it's a great city because it's so affordable and it's, you know, great quality of life. And yeah, he can edit videos there. So I think there's definitely a future, like for creative types like my editor, to move to the Midwest, take advantage of that cheaper housing, and still, you know, have a great job. So it's just, I think it's almost like marketing, because in a lot of places the housing is already cheap there. Like there's already, like, it's easy to find cheap housing. It's just getting the people to move. Okay, sorry, James O'Malley. Okay, oh my gosh, you guys. Thank you. How can suburbs, towns in New England revitalize their downtowns that have existed since the 1700s? I mean, I get the sense that a lot of towns in New England already revitalized their downtowns disastrously in the urban renewal era. Like a lot of the revitalization attempts just like destroyed cities, like I think like Hartford, Connecticut, like New Haven, Connecticut, places like that, like got pretty decimated by urban renewal. And they used to have pretty great cores, like Providence, Rhode Island, right? So their problems seem to be more of like undoing the 50s and 60s redevelopment and not so much revitalizing the 1600s and 1700s type core. But again, I'm not from New England, so this is my sort of like, you know, outsider take on that. But I think in general, keeping what's left of the sort of the pre-car city is great. And Paradox Addicts, you spent $2 to insult me as a Packers fan by saying go Bears. What can I say? Go Pack Go. All right, guys. Thank you so much for staying up with me. It's 10 o'clock. I know it sounds early on a Friday night, but I have a child who is 9 months old who will keep me up all night. So I need to head out. I really enjoyed this. This was great. I haven't done this in a while, and I will try to make this happen more often, especially now that locked in my house and I don't get as much interaction as I usually do. So thank you all so much for watching. Just a couple of quick updates. Next video will be up on Thursday, and that one's going to be on traffic and level of service, for those of you who know what that is and kind of why it hurts infill development and preferences suburban development. I'm thinking about doing another video after that on sort of answering the question, like, what is a suburb? That one's sort of floating around in my head right now. Then after that, it's sort of whatever idea I can think of. So thank you so much for all those who stayed up late. Thank you so much for all those who Woke up early. I really appreciate all of you who view the channel so much. You have no idea, and it's so fun to make videos for you all. And until next time, thank you so much. Night.